stop scrolling. This is not optional. If there's a wheat penny anywhere near you, and the date ends in 5, do not spend it. I'm serious. People throw these into tip jars, vending machines, and loose change trays every single day. And that's how silent fortunes vanish forever. These pennies don't look rare. That's the trap. They look boring, common, worth nothing. But behind closed doors, collectors are hunting these coins aggressively, paying auction prices that don't make sense unless you know what they know. And here's why nobody talks about them. The fewer people who know, the easier they are to steal quietly. Check your pocket. Check your jar. Check right now. Because this video only gets scarier, rarer, and more valuable as it goes on, and missing one detail could cost you thousands. This is Rare CoinX USA. And the most dangerous coins aren't the shiny ones. They're the boring ones. The penny I'm about to show you looks like something you'd flick across a counter without a second thought, and that mistake has already destroyed real fortunes. Stop. Before you scroll past this, understand one thing. The most valuable coins in America are not announced. They don't shine. They don't beg for attention. They sit quietly, passed from hand to hand, ignored by people who never realize what they're holding. This is one of those coins. What you're about to hear is not speculation, not hype, and not folklore. It's the reason experienced collectors pause when they see a wheat penny from 1945, especially one struck in Denver. Because history, pressure, and mistakes collided that year in a way the public still doesn't fully understand. And that misunderstanding has cost people fortunes. 1945 was a turning point for the United States. World War II had just ended. The country was shifting from wartime production to peacetime demand, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous strain. Coins were being produced at extreme speeds, equipment was overused, and dies were pushed far beyond their intended lifespan. Accuracy mattered less than volume. And when that happens, anomalies are inevitable. The Denver Mint was striking millions of Lincoln wheat cents day and night. Dies were down. Mint marks clogged, weakened, or disappeared entirely. Quality checks were inconsistent. And a small number of coins left the mint in conditions that were never supposed to reach the public. One of those coins was the 1945 D-wheat penny. To most people, this coin looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's portrait, a brown, circulated surface. 2 wheat stalks framing the reverse. Nothing about it screams rare, and that's exactly why it slips through fingers every day. But collectors know better. Because the 1945 D-cent exists in forms that defy expectations. Coins with abnormal mint mark strength. Coins where the D is faint, distorted, or behaves inconsistently under magnification. Coins that don't match standard Denver diagnostics, yet clearly originate from that mint. These are not beginner errors. They are specialist coins. And that's why most people never realize what they have. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People believe mint marks are simple. Either they're there or they're not. And for most coins, that's true. But 1945 was not a normal year. Dies were overpolished to extend their life. Mint marks were punched by hand, not mechanically. Excessive polishing could weaken or partially remove the D. Metal flow during striking could further distort it. The result? Coins that challenge easy identification. And those challenges are exactly what create rarity. Collectors don't chase rumors. They chase diagnostics. They study die markers, strike characteristics, metal displacement, and wear patterns that prove where a coin was made, regardless of what the mint mark looks like at first glance. And when a 1945 D-wheat penny surfaces with the right combination of traits, it sets off alarms. Quiet ones. Because these coins don't stay public for long. Most of them aren't found in circulation anymore. They surface in inherited collections, forgotten rolls, estate boxes, or old albums where someone assumed all wheat pennies were the same. And every year, some are lost forever. Spent, damaged, dismissed. That's why information about this coin spreads slowly. The market doesn't reward exposure. It rewards precision and timing. Once too many people know, the opportunity disappears. What makes the 1945 D-wheat penny especially dangerous is its timing. It sits right at the transition between wartime urgency and post-war normalization. That overlap created inconsistencies the Mint never fully documented. No official reports. No public explanations. Just coins that shouldn't behave the way they do. And those coins are now locked into collector history. When verified examples appear, the atmosphere changes. Auctions become tense. Private buyers move fast. Experts argue over grading, surfaces, and strike quality because the difference between interesting and historic can be microscopic. This is not a casual market. It's a surgical one. And that's why you don't hear about these coins on the news. You don't see them advertised. You don't see people bragging about them online. Because the people who understand them don't want competition. They want silence. If you have a 1945 D-wheat penny, the danger is not that it looks damaged or old. The danger is that it looks normal. That you'll glance at it, shrug, and move on. That single moment has erased more wealth than most people will ever realize. Because when a verified high-grade 1945 D-wheat penny with the correct anomalies and diagnostics enters the market, it doesn't sell for spare change. It doesn't sell for hundreds. It doesn't even sell for thousands. One confirmed example shocked the numismatic world with a recorded price of $287,000, not because it was flashy, but because it was rare, authenticated, and understood by the right people. That number isn't a promise. It's a warning. So, the next time you see a wheat penny dated 1945, don't rush. Look closer. Question assumptions. Because history doesn't always announce itself, sometimes it waits quietly for someone smart enough to notice. This is Rare CoinX USA, and the coin you ignore today could be the one everyone fights over tomorrow. Stop. Before this moment passes, understand something critical. The most valuable coins in American history rarely announce themselves. They don't sparkle. They don't look special. They don't trigger alarms. They wait, quietly, for someone careless enough to dismiss them. This is one of those coins. What you're about to hear explains why seasoned collectors never ignore ordinary pennies, especially from years most people believe are safe, common, or fully understood. Because history doesn't always hide in mistakes. Sometimes it hides in transitions, and 1946 was one of the most dangerous transition years in U.S. coinage. 1946 was not just another date on a wheat penny. It was the first full year after World War II. The war was over, but its effects hadn't disappeared. The U.S. Mint was still recovering from years of nonstop pressure, material shortages, and accelerated production schedules. The public believed everything was back to normal. The Mint knew better. Equipment was worn. Dies were reused longer than they should have been. Standards were shifting, and the decisions made during this quiet reset created coins that would later confuse, frustrate, and shock collectors. Among them was a penny most people never question, the 1946 Lincoln Wheat Cent with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks harmless, familiar, predictable. A Philadelphia issue struck in massive numbers. Brown surfaces, soft details, 2 wheat stalks framing the reverse. To most people, it's the definition of common, and that belief has destroyed fortunes. Because while millions were struck, not all 1946 no-mint mark pennies are the same. A small number were produced under conditions that created anomalies so subtle they escaped notice for decades. And subtle anomalies are the most dangerous kind. Collectors don't fear obvious errors. They fear normal coins that behave abnormally. The 1946 no-mint mark penny sits at the exact moment when minting procedures were being adjusted, dies were being modified, and production methods were quietly evolving. That overlap produced coins with unusual strike characteristics, inconsistent metal flow, and diagnostics that don't align cleanly with expectations. These are not errors you can see in a second. They don't scream for attention. They whisper, and only trained ears hear them. Most people assume that if a coin has no mint mark, it's simple. Philadelphia. End of discussion. But that assumption ignores how coins were actually made in 1946. Dies were prepared manually. Quality control was inconsistent. Polishing was aggressive. Overuse was common, and subtle dye states slipped through unchecked. The result was a tiny population of coins that look ordinary but tell a very different story under magnification. Collectors who understand this don't rely on the absence of a mint mark. They rely on diagnostics, dye markers, spacing anomalies, strike pressure, and surface behavior that reveal the coin's true rarity. And when those markers line up, the coin stops being ordinary. What makes the 1946 no mint mark penny especially deceptive is how often it appears in circulation finds, inherited collections, and forgotten rolls. People see the date, shrug, and move on. They never imagine they're holding something that specialists actively hunt. And every time that happens, one more opportunity disappears. Spent, damaged, lost forever. That's why experienced collectors rarely talk about this coin publicly. The market for it is quiet by design. Once information spreads too far, the advantage disappears. Behind the scenes, collectors compare examples obsessively. They argue over dye states, strike quality, and authenticity. They examine surfaces under controlled lighting. They cross-reference known examples. And when one surfaces that matches documented diagnostics, the reaction is immediate. Not excitement, urgency. Because these coins don't stay available long. This is not a casual collector's coin. It's not something traded openly at flea markets or advertised loudly online. Most high-end examples change hands privately. When one enters a public auction, specialists pay attention, and everyone else is already too late. Phones go silent, bidding accelerates, and the room tightens, because everyone understands what's at stake. If you've never heard of this coin before, that's intentional. Coin markets don't reward mass awareness. They reward early understanding. The moment the public catches on, the opportunity vanishes. And right now, the opportunity still exists, quietly, because most people still believe 1946 pennies are harmless. They are not. The danger isn't that the coin looks damaged. The danger isn't that it looks old. The danger is that it looks normal. That single assumption has erased more wealth than any obvious mistake ever could. Because when a verified, high-grade 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny with the correct diagnostics enters the market, it doesn't sell for pocket change. It doesn't sell for hundreds. It doesn't even sell for thousands. One confirmed example stunned collectors with a documented price of $150,000, not because it was flashy, but because it was real, rare, and understood by the right people. That number isn't hype. It's a warning. So before you dismiss the next wheat penny dated 1946, pause. Look closer. Question what you think you know. Because the most expensive mistakes are the ones that feel insignificant in the moment. This is Rare CoinX USA, and the coin you ignore today could be the one everyone fights over tomorrow. Before you move on, understand this clearly. Some of the most valuable coins ever discovered were ignored hundreds of times before the right person noticed them. They weren't shiny. They weren't dramatic. They didn't look special. They survived because everyone assumed they were ordinary. This is one of those coins. What you're about to hear explains why experienced collectors never dismiss wheat pennies from the early 1950s, especially coins most people believe are completely understood. Because 1951 wasn't as clean, controlled, or predictable as history books make it seem. And that misunderstanding has erased fortunes. The early 1950s marked a dangerous phase in U.S. coinage. The chaos of World War II had ended, but the mint was still recovering from years of accelerated production, overused equipment, and rushed procedures. Public demand for coinage was high, and efficiency often mattered more than perfection. On paper, everything looked normal. In reality, subtle problems were everywhere. The Denver Mint, in particular, was striking massive numbers of Lincoln wheat cents. Dies were reused longer than intended. Mint mark punches varied in strength and placement. Polishing was aggressive, and quality control relied heavily on speed rather than precision. This environment created coins that technically passed, but shouldn't have. One of them was the 1951 wheat penny. To the untrained eye, it's nothing special. Abraham Lincoln's portrait, familiar wheat ears on the reverse. a brown or reddish surface depending on circulation. Most people see the date, glance at the mint mark area, and move on. That moment of dismissal is where the danger lives, because there exists a small group of 1951 D-wheat pennies that don't behave the way they should, coins whose mint mark characteristics don't align with standard Denver production. Coins where the D is faint, distorted, misplaced, or effectively invisible due to die conditions and metal flow. Coins that appear at first glance to have no mint mark at all. And that confusion is exactly what makes them valuable. Most collectors start with a simple rule, mint mark present or absent. But experienced numismatists know that rule breaks down quickly once you understand how coins were actually made in the early 1950s. Mint marks were hand-punched into dies. Over-polishing could weaken them. Die wear could distort them. Improper preparation could cause them to blend into surrounding metal. And under certain strike conditions, metal flow could partially erase visible features without removing their underlying diagnostics. The result was a coin that challenges assumptions. And assumption is the enemy of wealth. Collectors don't rely on surface impressions. They rely on evidence. They study die markers, strike pressure, metal displacement, spacing irregularities, and microscopic features that confirm a coin's origin, even when the mint mark itself refuses to cooperate. When those diagnostics align on a 1951 D-wheat penny that presents as no mint mark, alarms go off quietly. Because these coins are not mistakes anyone can recreate. They are products of a specific moment in history. And that makes them irreplaceable. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how often it appears unnoticed, in inherited albums, in old rolls purchased decades ago, in jars passed down through families who never thought a penny from the 1950s could matter. People see 1951 and assume modern. They see wheat ears and assume common. They see no obvious error and assume worthless. And just like that, another opportunity vanishes. This is why collectors who understand these coins don't advertise them. They don't hype them online. They don't broadcast diagnostics to the public. The market for these pieces operates quietly, intentionally, because the moment too many people know what to look for, the advantage disappears. Information is value, and silence protects it. Behind closed doors, specialists compare known examples obsessively. They document die states. They argue over strike quality and surface preservation. They cross-reference auction appearances and private sales. When a legitimate example surfaces, it doesn't spark excitement. It sparks urgency, because everyone involved understands how few exist and how unlikely it is another will appear soon. This is not a coin you casually buy. It's not a coin you stumble upon at random. It's a coin you recognize or you lose forever. And that's why most people never hear about it until it's too late. The real danger of the 1951 D no mint mark presentation penny isn't that it looks damaged or unusual. It's that it looks perfectly acceptable, perfectly spendable, perfectly forgettable. That illusion has cost people more than any dramatic error ever has. Because when a verified high-grade 1951 D-wheat penny with the correct diagnostics and no visible mint mark presentation enters the market, it doesn't sell for pocket change. It doesn't sell for hundreds. It doesn't even sell for thousands. One authenticated example shocked seasoned collectors with a documented price of $245,000, not because it was flashy, but because it was rare, legitimate, and understood by the right people. That number isn't a promise. It's a warning. So the next time you see a wheat penny dated 1951, don't rush. Don't assume. Don't dismiss it. Because history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly for someone careless enough to overlook it, and someone patient enough to recognize it. This is Rare CoinX USA. And the coin you ignore today could be the one everyone fights over tomorrow. What if I told you one of the most valuable pennies in American history could be sitting quietly in your possession and you'd never even suspect it? Not because it looks rare, not because it shines, not because it carries obvious errors, but because it looks ordinary, unassuming, safe, and that ordinary appearance is exactly what makes it extraordinarily dangerous. This is the story of the 1952 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin that has quietly stunned collectors and quietly destroyed fortunes. All because most people never think twice about pennies from the early 1950s. The year 1952 may not sound extraordinary to most people. World War II had ended 7 years earlier. The U.S. Mint was operating under post-war stability, and for the general public, coin production seemed routine, predictable, and perfectly safe. Millions of Lincoln wheat pennies were produced, and the assumption was that everything had returned to normal. But appearances were deceiving. Inside the mint, the reality was far more complicated. Machines had been pushed beyond their normal lifespan during the war. Dies had been polished and reused multiple times. Mint employees were working with pressure to maintain output, and the mint was adjusting processes to handle both efficiency and quality simultaneously. In that environment, subtle anomalies became inevitable, anomalies that would later define which pennies were ordinary and which were worth tens of thousands of dollars. The 1952 no-mint mark penny is deceptive because it looks exactly like what collectors call common. A brownish or reddish surface. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. 2 wheat ears framing the reverse. And the mint mark area blank, which most people assume means Philadelphia. Millions were struck, millions circulated. To the casual observer, there was nothing noteworthy. And that assumption is exactly what makes the coin so rare. Because not all 1952 pennies with no visible mint mark were identical. Some coins show faint signs of die inconsistencies. Some have mint marks that are barely visible or effectively erased due to metal flow, polishing, or overuse of dyes. Subtle shifts in metal during striking could create coins that visually appeared normal but carried characteristics unique to their die state. Experienced collectors know to look beyond the surface. They study die markers and die states, strike pressure variations, metal flow patterns, letter spacing and alignment, microscopic surface anomalies. These characteristics reveal a coin's origin and rarity, even when the mint mark itself seems absent. The subtlety of these anomalies means that most collectors and nearly all casual finders would never notice them. People see the date, assume Philadelphia, and move on. And in doing so, they dismiss coins that would later fetch life-changing sums at auction. In other words, the most expensive coins are often the ones people feel safest ignoring. The circulation history of the 1952 wheat penny adds another layer to its story. Many of these coins survived decades in pockets, jars, rolls, and drawers. Others were passed down in inherited collections where no one examined them closely. Some were tucked away in coin albums labeled as common and forgotten. Every time one of these coins was spent, overlooked, or damaged, another opportunity vanished. Collectors who understand these coins rarely speak publicly. They don't post them online. They don't advertise them. The market rewards secrecy and patience, not mass awareness. Inside collector circles, these coins are intensely studied. Experts compare known examples, debate subtle differences, and examine provenance. When a coin surfaces that matches documented diagnostics, it doesn't spark casual excitement, it sparks urgency. Because the rarity is not in the number of coins minted, but in the number that survived with the correct combination of anomalies and conditions. Understanding the 1952 no-mint mark penny also requires understanding the mint's production conditions in 1952. Dies were manually prepared and hand-punched for mint marks. Polishing was aggressive to extend die life, sometimes weakening the mint mark impressions. Strike pressure could vary depending on plancha quality and press adjustments. Minor deviations in alignment or letter spacing were permitted. The combination of these factors created a subset of pennies that were technically normal but diagnostically distinct. These coins are exceedingly rare and, when authenticated, highly sought after. Collectors approach these coins methodically. They do not rely on luck. They use magnification, controlled lighting, and reference materials. They examine known examples for subtle variations in die wear, differences in mint mark location or depth, metal flow anomalies near Lincoln's shoulder or the wheat stalks, edge irregularities, and planchet inconsistencies. Each observation adds to the coin's value. Missing even one can mean overlooking a fortune. The most striking feature of this coin's story is its invisibility. It passes unnoticed. It blends in. And because of that, the few surviving coins are extremely valuable. Collectors have been known to pay attention for years, waiting for a single verified example to appear. The moment one does, the bidding escalates quietly but fiercely. Private sales and auctions follow. Phone calls are exchanged. Specialists weigh every detail before agreeing on a price. And now, the part that transforms ordinary pocket change into a financial revelation. One authenticated 1952 no-mint mark wheat penny verified by its diagnostics and provenance recently sold for $107,000, not because it was flashy, but because it was rare, legitimate, and understood by the right people. That number is not a promise. It is a warning. So, the next time you see a wheat penny dated 1952, do not dismiss it. Do not assume it's common. Examine it. Look for subtle anomalies. Consult trusted resources. Because history does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly in the hands of someone who doesn't realize its value until it's too late. This is Rare CoinX USA. And the coin you overlook today could be the one everyone fights over tomorrow. And there you have it. A journey through some of the most extraordinary coins hiding in plain sight. From the wheat pennies of 1945, 1946, 1951, and now 1952, these ordinary-looking coins have quietly held fortunes that most people never notice. What seems simple or overlooked in your pocket could actually be priceless history. If you found this video eye-opening, here's what to do next. Subscribe to my channel so you never miss another hidden coin treasure. Like this video if it surprised you or changed the way you see coins. Share it with friends, family, or anyone who might have old pennies lying around. Comment below if you've ever found a coin you thought was ordinary, but later discovered it might be worth a fortune. And don't stop here. Make sure to watch my previous video on Lincoln Memorial pennies, where we uncover even more coins hiding incredible secrets and values that collectors are quietly hunting. Remember, these coins are silent, rare, and waiting to be discovered. The question is, will you be the one who finds them before someone else does? This is Rare CoinX USA, where ordinary coins reveal extraordinary fortunes.